I'm gonna go back to my childhood and we're gonna trauma dump right now. I guess you could say this is where my villain's origin would have started. But I used to be really scared of the Thriller song when I was little. To the point I would scream at my mom to turn it off whenever it came on the radio. Ugh, the music video was much worse. I would hate listening to that song. Vincent Price's laugh and his dialogue in the middle of the song would do it for me. I hated it. I couldn't stand it. Don't get me wrong, Michael Jackson loved the guy. Billie Jean came on the radio. First thing I would do is moonwalk around the kitchen in my underwear. Grab my. Never mind. But as soon as I hear the howling, the beat, his lyrics in the first few seconds, the sound of the door slamming, everything about this song screamed at me that it's scary. Okay? I was a little kid. I didn't know any better. I'm sorry. Fast forward to my mom getting a job in downtown Los Angeles. Fine. LA. And trying to find a place for me to be watched. Babysit. Somebody needs to babysit me. I can't be uh, living in the house by myself. One of her friends who ends up watching me, not the other friend who I used to live next door and saved us from ever having to look for a babysitter. No, the first one. My mom figured if this lady has two kids, then I can be friends with them and we can hang around, right? That's what all moms think. Yeah, that's the best way to go, right? Wrong. How does a bully torture someone who knows their weakness? This fucking kid was bad. He set fire to his brother's crib and then blamed it on me. The fuck? The kid brother wasn't in the crib though. He just thought it would be fun to throw a fucking firework in the house. And in doing so, it set fire to the kid's crib. I was blamed for it. But I didn't want to admit or deny it either. I was like, that was the reason. Told my mom, let's get the fuck out of here. Not in that way, of course. I never caused. Um, get out of there as soon as possible. I don't want to be here. This kid definitely showed signs of fatherless behavior to the point that he bullied me because his younger brother and myself kept getting all of his mom's attention. Look at that. Even as a kid, I got MILF's attention. Why did he blame it on me? I told on him. You see, when he found out I was scared of the song, he locked me in the closet and turned on the song at full blast that I would cry my eyes out. It was very, very traumatic. I asked my mom to tell him not to put the song on anymore. She asked why. I told her because it scares me. She told him she got pissed off at them. Like, why the fuck are you having? Is he listening to a song? I wouldn't be inside the house after that moment. Instead, I'd be playing outside with my little toys, superheroes, where whenever one of my friends, this one guy would pass by, see me and my toys, and try to tell me he had comic books. Wasn't I told at the time not to talk to strangers? But he said he had comic books. uh, no, for real, he was a cool dude. He lived around my neighborhood. He ended up fucking giving me half of his collection. That guy's name is Eduardo, and I'm friends with him to this day. He saved us. He saved me. He was the one who introduced me to comic books, wrestling, and horror movies. He was the one that said, "Here, Nightmare on Elm Street 1." So I would no longer be placed at that house. Instead, my mom told her friend that lived next door to us, and she told my mom to leave me with them. And so we did. And so my love for wrestling, comic books, horror movies came from that family alone. They taught it to me. They and introduced me to it all. But how did I get my fear of Thriller and Vincent Price? Fast forward to another country, Nicaragua, my grandmother's place. My cousin decided to play Michael Jackson, and there I go doing the Billie Jean moonwalk. As soon as I hear his voice, I start doing it. It's like, ah, hee hee. Uh, but then I hear it. The footsteps, the howling. I cover my ears. I told my cousin about the situation. She stopped the song, placed the first part of the song again, holds my hand so I wouldn't like put him around my ears, and tells me it's fake. She stops the song again, explains to me what he is saying and that it's just a song, plays it again, stops it, tells me everything is fake. He's just telling a story. It's fake. Fake things. She keeps doing this throughout the whole song. At the end, I hear Vincent's laugh. I've heard his laugh before, but I had my ears covered at the time. But this time, it was different. She helped me face my fear of the evil that was Thriller.
Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight. Spooky, scary skeletons speak with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder in surprise when you hear these zombies shriek.
We're so sorry, skeletons, you're so misunderstood. You only want to socialize,
but I don't think we should. A spooky, scary skeleton shouts startling, shrilly screams. They'll sneak from their sarcophagus and just won't leave you be.
Welcome back to the podcast from Under the Apron. I'm Evo. I usually talk about wrestling, but it's the season of horror, so this is week 4 of me discussing horror movies, whether it be me, the listeners, or people answering questions from the blog. It makes for good content, and in doing so, it's making me want to create another podcast on the side that has a lot to do with horror as well. This will still be the main podcast, but I want to talk about horror movies and shows and possibly post them on here as bonus episode. Speaking of podcast, let's talk about the analytics. 7,700 listeners. Goal is now going to be 9K by the end of the year. I know I'm not going to be able to make it a 10K, but hey, one can only hope, right? We're adding a new country that is listening to us, and that country is Sweden, and they're listening to the podcast. So to them, I must say this. Hallo? Tack för att du lyssnade på min podcast från Underförklarat. Jag uppskattar ditt stöd. Which basically translates to, hello, thank you for listening to my podcast from Under the Apron. I appreciate your support. And to go along with the awesome news of me going over 7.7K downloads, I would like to tell you all about the merch.
We've got some merch. We've got some merch. We've got some merch. We've got some merch. Go buy our merch. Go buy our merch. Go buy our merch. Go buy our merch. Got some merch. Go buy our merch. We've got some merch. Go buy our merch.
Not only is our From Under the Apron podcast t-shirts on sale at TeePublic, but I also got Fatherless Behavior on the site as well. I think it's time to jump on the bandwagon of selling our catchphrases. And even if you don't get them, my friends and listeners of the podcast do. And it's the reason I'm doing it. Yahweh! Okay, I'll tell you why I did Fatherless Behavior. So, and it's as a joke. You know, it came out as a joke at first. About a month ago, this guy came to my live stream while I was recording an episode of the podcast, and one of the friends in the chat said he looked like Ronnie from Jersey Shore. Right. So naturally, I started quoting the show. You got the usual MVP, Gym Tan Laundry GTO. Ron, stop! Ron! Are you friends with her, Ron? Are you friends with her? Tell me now, Ron. This dude didn't like it and said he naturally tells people it annoys him. So, we all got quiet for a moment, and I said, well, seems to me that it's quite a situation you have there, bud. And then I said, you know, here we are, having meat butt problems. So he took highly offensive to that because, damn. Right then and there, he said, ugh, fatherless behavior, tisk, tisk, tisk. I laughed so hard and said, motherless also. You're going to might as well get both of them out of the picture, you know. It was a burn. It was a cool burn, but it was a good burn nonetheless. The guy left. I continued to do my podcast, and since then I've been saying fatherless behavior, showing signs of fatherless behavior. Fast forward to a week ago, I see him again. He's interrupting one of my episodes, so he messaged me with some type of hate speech. I don't remember. I replied back with, that's why I'm making t-shirts out of fatherless behavior. Thanks for coming to my stream, and thank you for the content. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the support. I'm basically taking the Johnny Bananas route when Fessy called him somewhat athletic as a burn. And Banana turned it all around and made shirts out of that. And people basically tagged Fessy and posted the shirts. If people are talking bad about you and saying bad things about you, merch it. And why not? Take advantage of a situation. So I'm doing it. Why not? That's fatherless behavior right there.
There are still a lot of things in this world that we all need to learn. Oftentimes, these things may seem trivial, but lessons nonetheless. It's been many years, and now it's time that I told you how it all began. It started with a virus, and no, not the one you're thinking of. This virus came so quick, there was no way we could have prepared for it. Everyone was still focused on COVID-19 when it struck. Some believed it was a variant, but they were wrong. Before we knew it, the world was thrown into chaos. Riots broke out in almost every major city. Looters began taking whatever they could, even each other's lives. People lost loved ones, they lost homes, and some lost themselves. After about 2 weeks, civilization had crumbled into a land of lawlessness. Everything seemed lost, until I found you. That's when we gained the one thing we all desperately needed. Hope. On April 15th, 2022, my heart began to beat with a purpose once again. This is the story of raising hope.
with you.
I was told to watch a few horror movies this past week, and it's what I've been doing. A few movies that I've never seen before up until now, and just a few days ago I watched all of them, as well as one of Kevin Smith horror movies. Those three were Interview with the Vampire, The Lost Boys, and Tusk. Tusk recommendation came from user KitKatBLR, who messaged me and told me about this movie because it sounded similar to the 2013 Daniel Radcliffe Horns movie. But it wasn't. Here's the synopsis. I hope you all are ready to get your mind blown. When podcaster Wallace travels to Canada to interview someone, he winds up meeting a strange man named Howe, who has many stories to tell about his past life during his interview. Wallace wakes up the next day finding out Howe isn't the person he thought it was. Howe has plans to surgically and mentally turn Wallace into a walrus. Starring Justin Long, or Justin, he's gonna die in every horror movie Long, Michael Parks, Haley Joel Osment, Genesis Rodriguez, Harley Morenstein from Epic Mealtime, if y'all remember that, and an unrecognizable Johnny Depp. Of course, the movie comes with Kevin's favorite people, his daughter Harley Quinn, his wife Jennifer Schwabeck, and introducing Depp's daughter Lily Rose. Both Harley and Lily reprised their roles from this movie in another movie called Yoga Hosers, which I'm definitely going to watch. Alright, let's talk about the movie. This movie was disturbing. Like, what? It starts off saying the movie's based on true events, which got me invested. I heard about a walrus thing, and then true events. Okay, you have me. Let's see what we got going on. We see both Justin and Haley's characters, talking on their podcast about this kid that cut his leg off with a sword, and they dub him Sword Kid, which is a parody of the Star Wars Kid viral video from a few years back. Wallace tells his co-host Teddy that he is going to see this guy up in Canada and have a sit-down interview with him, but the problem is that once he gets there and shows up at the house, he finds out the kid unalived himself because of the shame. Wallace, not wanting to leave Canada right away, goes to a bar, calls his co-host about what happened, and says he's going to stick around to get some content. He goes to the bathroom, and in the stall he finds a letter about a guy wanting to look for someone to tell his stories to. Wallace is interested and drives over to this man's house to meet him. Once he is there, he meets Howard Howe, who is in a wheelchair and gives Wallace a cup of tea. A cup of tea. Yes, a cup of tea. Wallace curiously walks around the house looking at house items and comes across this long stick. Howe tells him it's the bone of a walrus dick. Wallace laughs and asks him about how he came across this. Howe explains to him that he was lost at sea once. When he got to land, he met a walrus. Minutes later, Wallace is knocked out by cold by the tea and wakes up the next morning with his leg cut off. Howe explains to him that he misses his best friend, the walrus, and he begins to explain to Wallace he is going to turn him into a walrus, in which he does. The movie is disturbing. Thank you, Kit Kat, for letting me watch this. I had to look up this movie, if this movie was actually real, and I found something on Screen Rant. Steve Kafari and Tom Russell wrote, Tusk is based on a true story, but the story is based on isn't the same one the movie tells. Rather, Tusk is the exploration of what would have happened if a joke were real and what circumstances would need to fall into place for it to plausibly happen. The advertisement for a voluntary live-in walrus did exist, so Tusk isn't being false with its claims of being based on real events. However, the characters of Wallace, Teddy, and importantly Howard Howe were all made up. Chris Parkinson, who made the original Tusk advertisement, didn't even post a note himself and definitely didn't plan to turn a human being into a walrus. Kevin Smith created every detail beyond the premise for Tusk. In Tusk, Los Angeles podcaster Wallace and Teddy ridicule unfortunate people in viral videos, and Wallace interviews them. For an interview with a teenager who mistakenly cut off his own leg, Wallace has to go to the outskirts of Manitoba, Canada, after he discovers that the man has died by suicide, presumably because of the ridicule. He finds a flyer posted by an old man who seems like he would be perfect for the podcast. Unlike Parkinson's original human walrus ad, however, the flyer in Tusk does not mention the walrus and it's not a joke. Instead, it is a lure posted by a serial killer, Howard Howe, a retired sailor obsessed with finding redemption for killing and eating a walrus that he claims once saved his life. He disfigures his victims and surgically transforms them into human walrus, which he named Mr. Tusk, so that he can reenact their time together and give his savior a chance to live. This thankfully bears no resemblance to the real-life Chris Parkinson and the ad he posted, but was an incredibly satisfactory answer to the question, hey, what if someone posted this and it wasn't a joke? As evidenced by the cult viral fame Tusk has found since its release. In the podcast Fat Man Beyond via Geek Tyrant, Kevin Smith himself reported that Tusk 2 is on the way, and there's a reason he left the human walrus at the zoo in Tusk ending. The writer, director, actor even gave up some of the sequel's premise, which will be called Tusk, so audiences can know what to expect. First, Justin Long will be returning to reprise his role, and at some point he will be rehabilitated out of the human walrus. However, his transformation still sticks with him, and he wants to inflict the pain he experienced on others now. Presumably, horror actor Justin Long will be surgically turning people into half-human animal hybrid in Tusk, and it'll be intriguing to witness Long in a villain role. Kevin Smith plans to bring the Tusk sequel to the big screen in 2024 on the 10-year anniversary of the original film.
In a world where the spooky and supernatural collide, two friends go on an epic journey to the other side. Hi, I'm Rain.
Hi, I'm Luna, and we're the hosts of
Spooky Natural, a podcast where we try to make a skeptic into a believer.
Check us out to hear spooky tales of ghosts,
Alien encounters,
cryptids,
and all other unexplained mysteries.
Follow us on Twitter,
Instagram,
and join our Facebook group.
and listen wherever you get your podcasts. Spook you later.
Blank.
Because of last week's episode containing a few short, scary stories from listeners as well as mine, I asked again if I should read more. So I looked around the web and found one particular that I want to read. But first, here are two stories from my favorite British barbecue squirrel lady, the Sparkly Experiment. And of course, I have to do it in a British accent. So Amanda writes in, I hate it when my brother Charlie has to go away. My parents constantly try to explain to me how sick he is, that I am lucky for having a brain, where all the chemicals flow properly to their destinations like undammed rivers. When I complain about how bored I am without a little brother to play with, they try to make me feel bad by pointing out that his boredom likely far surpasses mine, considering he's confined to a dark room in an institution. I always beg for them to give him one last chance. Of course, they did at first. Charlie has been back home several times, each shorter in duration than the last. Every time, without fail, it all starts again. The neighborhood cats with gouged eyes showing up in his toy chest. My dad's razors found dropped on the baby slide in the park across the street. Mom's vitamins replaced by bits of dishwasher tablets. My parents are hesitant now, using last chances sparingly. They say his disorder makes him charming, makes it easy for him to fake normalcy, and to trick the doctors who care for him into thinking he is ready for rehabilitation. That I will just have to put up with my boredom if it means staying safe from him. I hate it when Charlie has to go away. It makes me have to pretend to be good until he is back. Okay. Here comes the other one. Okay. My daughter woke me up around 11:50 last night. My wife and I had picked her up from her friend Sally's birthday party, brought her home, and put her to bed. My wife went to the bedroom to read while I fell asleep watching the Braves game. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging my shirt sleeve, "guess how old I'm going to be next month?" "I don't know, Beauty," I said as I slipped on my glasses. "How old?" She smiled and held up 4 fingers. It is 7:30 now. My wife and I have been up for almost 8 hours. She still refuses to tell us where she got the 4 fingers. Um, yeah, I'm not gonna be sleeping tonight, I guess. And then the one I found online. I'll have the link to this story plus other stories in the show notes. It's called White While Red. Please be advised. This is a scary one. A man just moved into an apartment and heads to the receptionist to get his keys. The receptionist gave him the key with a smile, but warns him not to disturb the door with no number on his floor. He wondered why, but didn't bother to ask. He was too busy with his new apartment to care. After he finished unpacking, he began to get curious. He questioned why the receptionist would warn him of such things, and so he stepped out of his apartment to check the door with no number. He tried the doorknob first, but it was locked. So instead he got onto his knees and peeked through the keyhole. The apartment he was looking into was empty. His eyes scanned the whole place before stopping at a woman standing face against the wall in the corner. He noticed her pale skin and long black hair before stepping back, suddenly feeling perverted in a way for invading someone else's privacy. He brushed it off, assuming she was someone that did not want to be disturbed. The next day, he got more curious about the woman and eventually went back, straight away getting onto his knees. He peeked through the hole. He peeked through the keyhole and saw all red. Red. He assumed that the pale woman must have caught him peeking the last time and covered the hole with something red. He left the door alone and instead went down to the receptionist to ask her questions. The receptionist sighed and asked, "You looked through the keyhole, didn't you?" He admitted to it, and so she felt obliged to tell him the story. She told him that a couple used to live in the apartment a long time ago, but the husband went crazy and killed his wife. However, this couple wasn't normal. They had pale skin, black hair, and red eyes.
The monster blood changed direction, still bouncing and quivering and leaving white stains on the grass like enormous round footsteps.
Joe, stop reading it. This is too scary for me.
You're right, it is too scary.
If only we could talk about Goosebumps in a way that isn't scary.
Well, guess what, nerds? There might be a podcast like that called Geesebumps.
Geesebumps?
Did you mean Goosebumps?
Maybe. Geesebumps is a comedy podcast based on the works of R.L. Stine. Hosted by me, Danielle, PhD.
And me, JoJo, PhD.
And me, Jeff, regular person.
Featuring goofs, funny voices, and the occasional critical thought.
Geesebumps!
Available on Podbean and everywhere else podcasts can be found.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Dawn.
And if you've ever watched a TV show and thought to yourself, oh my god, that season finale plot twist was absolutely bonkers.
Or seen a movie and thought, wow, I need to talk to somebody about this train wreck immediately.
Then we think you'll fit right in with our podcast, I Hate It, Let's Watch It. We watch TV shows like Riverdale and Emily in Paris.
And movies like Deep Water, Killer Sofa, Rubber, and Deadly Illusions. And we give them the total rinsing they deserve.
It's basically group therapy for movie masochists. So come check us out wherever you stream podcasts.
"31 Days of Horror Question" continues. Let's see what the bloggers had to say about their favorite horror movies. Kultu Migrants from the country of Hungary said, and he said this in Hungarian, so I had to put it on Google and translate everything. Demons from 1985, directed by Lamberto Bava. Art imitating art is the basis of a demonic tale of a group of invited guests to the screening of a horror film that brings naturalism to life. They are baited and penned, and their walled-in feeling quickly turns to screaming fear as those who are dead lust after the flesh of the living. In this full-scale cinema of hell, it's only a question of time before demons from the abyss are asking for second portions. He says, "I screwed up then. Now I laugh about it." The last horror movie he saw in theater, Quiet Place, directed by John Krasinski, Jim from The Office. A family struggles for survival in a world where most humans have been killed by blind but noise-sensitive creatures. They are forced to communicate in sign language to keep the creatures at bay. He says, "It was pretty good, but I'm biased because of Emily Blunt." We all are biased because of Emily Blunt. Have you seen her? Favorite classic horror movie, The Shining. Get the shit. I'm kidding. The Shining. Y'all know what that is. Directed by Stanley Kubrick. He says there can be no question. I talked about The Shining last week. We're not going to talk about the synopsis again, are we? A horror movie you saw you love and didn't. Evil Dead. Original director Sam Raimi. Reboot director Fede Alvarez. He says, "I swear I thought it was a parody." Didn't say which one, so I'm putting both of them. I haven't seen the reboot, but the first one was pretty good, so, maybe talking about the reboot. Favorite horror remake, Dawn of the Dead, directed by Zack Snyder. Anna goes home to her peaceful suburban residence, but she is unpleasantly surprised the morning that follows when her husband is brutally attacked by her zombified neighbor. In the chaos of her once picturesque neighborhood, Anna flees and stumbles upon a police officer named Kenneth, along with more survivors who decide that their best chances of survival would be found at the deserted Crossroads shopping mall. When supplies begin running low and other trapped survivors need help, the group comes to the realization that they cannot stay put forever at the shopping mall and devise a plan to escape. He says, I loved Sarah Polly, who was constantly terrified, but very tough. Sarah Polly is the toughest. Favorite vampire movie? There's no such thing. The whole sub-genre is ridiculous, but still the zombie vampire series is very popular. The Strain. Created by Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan, the show centers around Dr. Ephraim Goodweather, the head of the CDC's New York-based Canary Project, who is called upon to investigate an airplane landing wherein everyone aboard is dead. What his team discovers is a viral outbreak that has similarities to an ancient strain of vampirism. The virus begins to spread, and Goodweather works with his team and a group of the city's residents to wage a war to save humanity. A horror movie you think no one has seen. I don't quite understand this, he says, but let's say Sauna. Sauna, director Antti Jussi Anila. The Russo-Swedish War, 1590 to 1595, has just ended, and new borders are drawn between Finland, under Swedish rule, and the Tsardom of Russia. Brothers Knut and Erik are tasked with marking the borders. They discover a mysterious village built in the middle of the swamp. Within the village is a sauna, and the brothers hope it may wash away their sins. Ooh, terrifying. SF Rudler says, favorite zombie movie? I love the first two Wreck movies immensely. 28 Days Later is wonderful. Snyder's Dawn of the Dead is batshit. I'm probably forgetting one, but zombies were so overdone at a certain point that I lobotomized the part of my brain that knew they existed. Favorite indie horror movie? Honestly hard to answer because indie is such a blanket term now. I have no idea what's indie and what isn't. Favorite monster movie? Low? Cloverfield? Cloverfield was good and came out when I was in middle school. Everyone I knew was talking about that movie. The Ritual surprised me too. Cool monster. Horror movie with a great soundtrack. Trouble Every Day has probably my favorite score ever by the Tindersticks. Ever. I could have and listened to it endlessly since the first time I heard it. Zamanska score is close to my heart as well, though. And finally, La Clementina. There's a lot of things that could win Best Use of Gore, but my all-time favorite is the lawnmower scene from Peter Jackson's Brain Dead. It's still one of the best things I've ever seen anywhere, and I love every second of it with all my heart. I looked up Brain Dead and it redirected me to the American name version, Dead Alive. Wellington, New Zealand, Lionel Cosgrove, an oppressed bachelor still living with his despotic mother, Vera, has finally found his soulmate, Paquita, a compassionate grocery store clerk. But fate plays cruel tricks on mortals. After a visit to the local zoo, a vicious Sumatran rat monkey... A what? A hybrid creature that resulted from the rape of 3 monkeys by plague-carrying rats out of Skull Island. Vite, Vera, and Lionel's already messed up world falls apart. Now that Vera's got the bite, the volatile situation at home spins out of control as the virulent infection gradually turns the cruel matriarch into a pus-squirting, flesh-eating living dead. As if having to deal with a new Vera weren't enough, an ugly secret haunts the family, and Lionel's basement becomes a magnet for stimulant-enhanced zombie misfits. Poor Lionel, whether you like it or not, you'll have to man up to clean up the mess and confront your decomposing mummy. However, has Lionel what it takes to save the day and get the girl? Man, I have so many favorite horror characters. I'm kind of obsessed with Hannibal Lecter and Candyman, and I always love Carrie. The violent psychic rage is definitely my thing. I also love David from Prometheus. They're all gonna laugh at you. They're all gonna laugh at you. They're all gonna. Okay, that's enough. Speaking of David the Cyborg, the best franchise by far would have to be Alien films. They are all so good and rich and complex and meaningful and have so much to offer. Plus, I love H.R. Giger. I usually don't like watching sequels very much, but those films are all superb, except the ones with the Predator. I hate those. Yeah, Predator 2 was kind of. But, but, I must say, Predator 2's only good part of the movie was when we found out there were alien bones. Xenomorph bones, basically. Best death scene. I don't necessarily watch horror just for the death scenes, but I honestly love everything in the first two Final Destination films. Same. Final Destination 2, same. And then Georgie in it. Hello, Georgie. Absolutely heart-wrenching. A great quote from a horror movie. I am the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom. Candyman. Horror character describes you? Maybe a little bit of May mixed with Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs. Black Christmas is so amazing. From its ambiguous ending, I still don't trust that asshole piano boyfriend, to the killer's knife POV shots, to the general feel of it all. It's got the perfect bow end of holiday horror and mystery. And then the Spanish film Xmas Tale makes Home Alone look like a film for babies. I honestly didn't think the kid was going to survive. Alright, let's look into it. Christmas Tale from 2005, directed by Paco Plaza and George A. Romero. Ooh, legendary. In 1985, in the coastal town, the friends Goldo Petty, Tito, Eugenio, and Monty stumble with a woman dressed like Santa Claus, trapped in a hole in the woods. While the boys go to the police station to ask for help, the others find a rope to take the woman out of the hole. However, the boys find in the police station that the woman's a dangerous thief, Rebecca Esposito, who has just stolen 2 million pesetas. That's $12,779.92 converted from a bank, and is wanted. The group decides to leave the woman in the hole without any food to force her to give Rob money to them. Meanwhile, Betty and Eugenio, that are fans of the movie Zombie Invasion, decide to make a voodoo ceremony with Rebecca to transform her into a zombie. When Rebecca escapes from her imprisonment, she uses an axe to chase the evil boys. I'm gonna watch this fucking movie. Oh shit, okay. Cool, no problem. No problem, no problem. Uh, Alright, let's go with favorite movie quotes, and it's from me. I have a few quotes, but let's stick to the one that makes me laugh because I say all the time, and it's one I like to quote mostly. Aliens, directed by James Cameron. 57 years after Ellen Ripley had a close encounter with the reptilian alien creature from the first movie, she is called back, this time to help a group of highly traditional colonial marines fight off against the sinister extraterrestrials. But this time, the aliens have taken over a space colony on the moon LV-426. When the colonial marines are called upon to search the deserted... When the colonial marines are called upon to search the deserted space colony, they later find out that they are up against more than they bargained for. Everybody. More than they bargained for. Using specially modified machine guns and enough firepower, it's either fight or die as the Space Marines battle against the aliens, as the Marines do their best to defend themselves. Ripley must attempt to protect a young girl who's the sole survivor of the nearly wiped out space colony. Who is the quote from? Bill Paxton as Private Hudson. As soon as the team lands on that planet and they know they have no way of survival, and it's crazy, he says the words,
You finished?
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Kill count according to Dead Meat, 15. Another memorable line from that movie: "Get away from her, you bitch!" From Ripley. I'm sorry, Riley? Wow. From Ripley. Bill Paxton continuously apologized to Carrie Henn, who plays the little girl Newt, throughout filming. Every time Hudson had to swear in front of her. Carrie later admitted that she didn't mind, mainly because she didn't really know what any of the words meant. The knife trick scene was originally going to be done by Bishop alone. According to Lance Henriksen, he suggested to James Cameron to have Hudson's hand put on top of his, to which Cameron agreed, as Henriksen felt the scene needed something extra. This change was discussed with almost everyone except Bill Paxton. Henriksen also remembers a long night of drinking after shooting the scene, followed by a reshoot of the scene, as it looked too fake when they sped the footage up. He accidentally caught Paxton's pinky with the knife on his reshoot. Fuck! I'm like, wow, I'm gonna watch this shit again and be like, ooh, he's fucking scared. In the words of Jay-Z on the song Takeover, "You made a hot line, I made a hot song." The cast of Workaholics, Adam Devine, Blake Anderson, and Anders Holm star in the 2018 movie Game Over Man as an homage to Bill Paxton's line. According to Paxton, he improvised many of his lines, including "Game over, man, game over." However, his famous line, "We're on an express elevator to hell, going down, man," was probably improvised as well, as it doesn't appear in the shooting script. "I can't do this, man, I can't do this." Like every fucking word, man. The second one is from Scream. Y'all know that one. Y'all know where it's coming. Y'all know where I'm going with this. Directed by Wes Craven. Y'all should know by now what the first movie is about. But if not, here's the synopsis. A year after her mother's death, Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, and her friends started experiencing some strange phone calls. They later learned the calls were coming from a crazed serial killer in a white-faced mask and a large black robe looking for revenge. His phone calls usually consist of many questions, the main one being, "What's your favorite scary movie?" Along with much scary movie trivia, ending with bloody pieces of innocent lives scattered around the small town of Woodsboro. Of course, the quote in question, Randy, played by Jamie Kennedy, they're all watching Halloween at a party when Randy burst out with the most memorable dialogue and rules of surviving a horror movie.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. Big no-no! Big no!
I'm a dead man.
Give him popcorn. Sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. No, the sin factor. It's a sin. It's an extension of number 1. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, "I'll be right back." Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
You see, you push the laws and you end up dead.
Kill counts 7 according to Dead Meat on YouTube. Pause. I love pausing the first kill of the movie. You can see Casey's boyfriend, Steve Ort's sloppy guts hanging out of his stomach while he's sitting in the chair. Always, always remember, Jason's mom was the killer in Friday the 13th one. The party scene runs 42 minutes long. It was shot over the course of 21 days from the time the sun set to the time it rose. After a wrap, the crew had t-shirts made that read, "I survived scene 118," which was the name of the scene during shooting. The cast and crew jokingly called it the longest night in horror history. Jamie Kennedy was chosen for the role of Randy because he would often improvise humor into his lines, which made director Wes Craven laugh.
Movies and feelings. Pop, pop. Bring Your Own Popcorn is a podcast that dives into people and the movies who love them. Let us preach to your choir or stoke your ire as we spiral down memory lane with cult classics, Jurassics, and other genres that rhyme with traffic. What we lack in education, we make up for with comedy, compassion, and camaraderie. I'm your host, Mixtape Majesty, inviting you to join me and an assortment of wonderful guests on fine podcast apps everywhere. Bring your own popcorn.
You're listening to Mama Murdered a Podcast. I'm your host, AB. Mama Murdered a Podcast is a podcast where me, the mama, will be killing it on the podcast. We'll be taking a deep dive into things that are hard to talk about and even harder to believe that these things actually happen in the world that we live in. This entire podcast will be a trigger warning. I'll be talking about triggering topics while I dive headfirst into a lot of the cases that I'll be covering. New episodes will be released every week on Wednesdays because nobody likes Mondays and because Fridays are for day drinking and barbecues. Some of the case topics will be murder, of course, serial killers, like Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, missing persons cases, like 5-year-old Summer Wells, who vanished from her own yard in broad daylight in the middle of June in Tennessee in 2021. And especially the ones where it kind of seems like they just vanished into thin air, like Brian Schaefer. He walked into a bar, but he never walked out. He's still never been seen again. I'll also be covering cold cases and lesser-known cases. Join me every Wednesday to talk about all things tragic, murder, and things that happen in the downright ugliest sides of society. If you like what you hear and you want to support the podcast, you can rate me on Spotify. You can also leave a review and rating on Apple Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at murdered_mama. All of these things are free and they only take about a second to do, and it really does help grow the podcast. If you have any case suggestions, please send them my way. You can send them to the email address mamamurderedapodcast@gmail.com.
Favorite holiday horror movie? Leprechaun, the 1993, starring Warwick Davis, Jennifer Aniston. Oh boy, here we go. In North Carolina, Dan O'Grady returns from Ireland, where he tricked the leprechaun and stole his gold coins. However, the leprechaun has followed him and kills his wife, Mrs. O'Grady, but Dan succeeds to lock him in a box in his basement with a 4-leaf clover on top of the box. Dan is ready to torch the house, but he has a heart attack before the arson. 10 years later, JD buys the derelict house by a very low price and moves from Los Angeles, or L.A., with his spoiled teenage daughter. Letterkenny has ruined me. Tori Redding intending to renovate the house. He hires the 3-man company composed by the handsome Nathan, the intellectually disabled Ozzy, and the smart boy Alex to paint the house, and Tori shows attraction to Nathan. When Ozzy goes to the basement, he accidentally removes the clover from the top of the box, unleashing the little monster. But nobody believes him. The leprechaun wants to retrieve his 100 golden coins, beginning a crime spree. It's the leprechaun, I'm just stealing gold, the leprechaun. This is Jennifer Aniston on her first movie role. Now, it doesn't totally say it takes place on St. Patrick's Day, but every year around that time, you can always bet AMC or Sci-Fi is showing the Leprechaun Marathon. Complete with lots of short and Irish jokes in between, this franchise has gone through every trope imaginable. Yes, he's gone to space, and it didn't take him long for him to show up in the hood twice. In 2013, I said the only thing that was left to do was to give this movie a reboot, and lo and behold, they did a year later with Hornswoggle filling in the titular character. I spoke about this on last year's Halloween episode that had horror movies with wrestlers in them. So who besides me does the leprechaun impression from Wayne's World?
I'm the leprechaun. Garth, I'm the leprechaun.
Cool it, okay?
I'm the leprechaun.
Stop it, all right?
Don't try and steal me, pot of gold.
Leave, but
I'm
can't
the leprechaun.
want to move.
Where are you gonna move?
Get away, leprechaun.
Are you gonna move
man.
to Ireland? Because I'm the leprechaun.
Got to go.
Kill count 4 according to Dead Meat on YouTube. George Lucas received a special thanks credit because Warwick Davis was under contract to him, and he gave Davis permission to appear in the movie. Davis started to regret making the film, but due to Anderson's later success on television, many people rented this film, and it spawned a lengthy series of sequels. Allegedly, it was one of Warwick's favorite movies. The production wanted to make a horror movie with many gore elements similar to the Friday the 13th saga or Nightmare on Elm Street, while Trimark wanted something similar to Critters or Gremlins that were horror comedies suitable for all audiences. Several versions of certain scenes, and it was with editing that a mixed variety of gore and humor were added. The movie was originally planned as a straightforward horror film, but Davis sought to add more comedic elements. Mark Jones agreed with his tonal shift, and they shot it as a horror comedy. Several scenes had to be reshot after the producers insisted that the film be made gorier to appeal to older audiences. Applying the leprechaun makeup to Warwick Davis took 3 hours, and taking it off took another 40 minutes. Davis described the experience as not a pleasant sensation. To pass the time while the makeup was being applied, Davis said he had bizarre conversations with Gabriel Bartalos, with whom he got along well. Davis was conscious of the need to stay relaxed and not move, and he channeled his confidence that the makeup effects were properly applied into his acting. Favorite horror character? Guess who it is. Freddy Krueger as portrayed by Robert Englund, 1984 to 2003. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Everyone should know this song by now, or even the theme to the Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And yes, I'm going to be that guy that picks Freddy. Why? Because he was awesome in all those movies, regardless of the fact of how I feel if he lost against Jason Voorhees. That shit with Ash in the comic books, I don't know what happened. I haven't read it. In the first movie, he was billed as Springwood Slasher, getting to you in your nightmares, and he came from the mind of Wes Craven, who was inspired by being bullied by a character like him when he was younger. In time, he would bring in the punchlines, and he would turn into a sarcastic nightmare monster. He brought the laughs in part 3 when he told one of the patients in an institution, "Welcome to prime time, bitch." You also saw a bit of his backstory in the Dream Warriors movie, including his mother. In The Dream Master, he tries to kill the rest of the kids he couldn't finish off in the third film. Favorite moment from that movie was when he turned his claws into a shark and killing the final girl in the last movie, Kirsten, in the sand at the beach. His punchline, still intact. He goes after the new kids and fights a final battle with the new final girl, Alice, who gets all the powers of the kids that died in that movie. Alice again shows up in 5, which is about the dream child. Babies can dream. So Freddy figures he can attack Alice through the baby's REM state. Perhaps the reason this movie was bad because of the low number of victims for Freddy, with one turning into comic book pages and ripping him apart. And then we move on to the 6th movie, Freddy's Final Nightmare, or the one part towards the end of the movie you were supposed to watch in 3D. Yeah, a cameo from that man that got killed in the pool of blood, Johnny Depp, as well as a memorable death scene for Robot Chicken's Breckin Meyer as a Nintendo character. Freddy with his one-liner, "Now you're playing with power." Some believe he sold out at this time by appearing in music videos like the Fat Boys and taking over MTV. He even had his own spin-off show, Freddy's Nightmares, that lasted for 44 episodes and more kills added to his resume. He was also a playable character on one of the Mortal Kombat games. He had a bit of laugh when he did Wes Craven's Final Nightmare, but at the same time we were getting his glove and his laugh as a cameo in Jason Goes to Hell, when at the very end of the movie his glove appears and brings the hockey mask down with him to hell. In 2003, we finally get the much anticipated Freddy vs. Jason. I was rooting for Freddy so much in that movie and hoped that they had an alternate ending in the DVD where Freddy actually wins. And that's where the laugh ended. I tried watching the remake and didn't even like Jackie Earle Haley's version at all. I gave it a chance, but to me, it didn't deliver. Robert Englund is my Freddy and the reason I was introduced to horror. 9, 10, never sleep again. Kill count. Freddy's kill count. Freddy kill count overall, 62. Memorable gruesome scene in Nightmare 4 when all the children's souls start coming out of his body. I had nightmares for days. Favorite guilty pleasure horror movie, Halloween 3, The Season of the Witch, 1982, directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. After the death of her father under suspicious circumstances, Ellie Grimbridge and Dr. Daniel Chalice decide to investigate the shady activities of Colonel Cochran, the owner of the Silver Shamrock Novelties Company. Before long, they discover Cochran's diabolical plot to brainwash the children of America into doing his bidding through a mixture of ancient rituals, technology, and witchcraft. This Halloween, wearing the mask of a skeleton, a witch, or a pumpkin can be deadly. Can Ellie and Daniel thwart the plans of the evil toy maker? I hate this movie with a passion because it doesn't have Michael Myers. From the first movie to the second movie, we just learned so much. So when I went to put in the VHS for Halloween 3 and was expecting something like the first two movies and instead got a movie about witchcraft, I was sad. I hate it, I tell you, and maybe so many others, but at the same time, it's my guilty pleasure because it has that Silver Shamrock song throughout the entire movie.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
And it has become kind of a tradition to watch days prior to October 31st coming up. The flamboyant ending of this movie upset me when I was younger because you didn't know what was happening, but now you just sit back, watch, and say, yeah, it was a good ending. John Carpenter didn't plan on having Michael Myers in another Halloween movie, only the first. He wanted a different Halloween-related story each time, but after the first Halloween, 1978, was a success, producers forced him to use Myers again. He did, but killed off Myers and Loomis to be done with them. Then he produced Season of the Witch to get back to his original plan, but at that point people were expecting Myers again, so it failed. Carpenter then sold the rights years later because he wasn't interested in doing more Myers. The new owners then brought Myers and Loomis back in 1988 with little explanation how they survived. Kill count on this movie alone, 28 deaths. And last one for the night, favorite horror director, Wes Craven. Born August 2, 1939, he was an American film director, screenwriter, producer, actor, and editor. Craven has commonly been recognized as one of the greatest masters of the horror genre due to the most cultural impact and influence of his work. Among his prolific filmography, Craven was best known for his pioneering work in the horror genre, particularly slasher films, where he mixed horror cliches with humor and satire. He created Nightmare on Elm Street franchise from 1984 to 2010, specifically writing and directing the first film, co-writing and producing the third, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors in 1987, and writing and directing the seventh, Wes Craven's New Nightmare in 1994. He additionally directed the first four films in the Scream franchise from 1996 to 2011. He also directed cult classics The Last House on the Left in 1972 and The Hills Have Eyes in 1977, the horror comedy The People Under the Stairs in 1991, and psychological thriller Red Eye in 2005. His other notable films include Swamp Thing, yes, the comic book movie, in 1982, The Serpent and the Rainbow in 1988, Shocker, 1989, Vampire in Brooklyn, 1995, and Music of the Heart. Music of the Heart. Music of the Heart. Really? Wow. Craven received several accolades across his career, which includes a Scream Award, a Sitges Film Festival Award, a Fangoria Chainsaw Award, and nominations for a Saturn Award, and several other film festivals. In 1995, he was honored by the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films with the Life Career Award for his accomplishments in the horror genre. In 2012, the New York City Horror Film Festival awarded Craven the Lifetime Achievement Award. On August 30th, 2015, age 76, Craven died of a brain tumor at his home in L.A. Craven's first feature film as director was The Last House on the Left, which was released in 1972. Craven expected the film to be shown at only a few theaters, which according to him gave me a freedom to be outrageous and to go into areas that normally I wouldn't have gone into, and not worry about my family hearing about it or being crushed. Ultimately, the movie was screened much more widely than he assumed, leaving him ostracized due to the content of the film. After the negative experience of The Last House, Craven attempted to move out of the horror genre and began writing non-horror films, with his partner Sean S. Cunningham, none of which attracted any financial backing. Finally, based on advice from a friend about the ease of filming the Nevada deserts, Craven began to write a new horror film based on the locale. The resulting film, The Hills Have Eyes, cemented Craven as a horror film director, with Craven noting, "It soon became clear that I wasn't going to do anything else unless it was scary." Craven frequently collaborated with Sean S. Cunningham. In Craven's debut feature, The Last House on the Left, Cunningham served as a producer. They pooled all their resources and came up with $90,000. Later, in Craven's best-known film, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Cunningham directed one of the chase scenes, although he was not credited. Craven had a hand in launching actor Johnny Depp's career by casting him in A Nightmare on Elm Street, Depp's first major acting role. In the mid-'80s, Craven worked briefly in the television industry by directing 7 episodes of the 1985 reboot of The Twilight Zone, including an episode that was written by George R.R. Martin. Elm Street villain Freddy Krueger appeared with Cunningham's Jason Voorhees in the 2003 slasher film Freddy vs. Jason, produced by Cunningham with screenwriter Victor Miller credited as character creator. In the 2009 remake of The Last House on the Left, Cunningham and Craven share production credits. Craven credited Coming of Rage, a 5-issue comic book series with 30 Days of Night writer Steve Niles. The series was released in digital form in 2014 by Liquid Comics, with a print edition scheduled for an October 2015 debut. Craven has cited filmmakers Ingmar Bergman, Luis Buñuel, Alfred Hitchcock, Federico Fellini, Jean Cocteau, and Francois Truffaut as among his major influences. Craven's first film, The Last House on the Left, was conceived as a remake of Bergman's The Virgin Spring, 1960. The goat in the dream sequence at the beginning of A Nightmare on Elm Street was included by Craven as an homage to Buñuel. Unfortunately, Craven died of a brain tumor at his home in LA on August 30th, 2015. Many actors and fellow directors paid tribute to him, including David Arquette, Adrienne Barbeau, Angela Bassett, Bruce Campbell, Heather Langenkamp, Neve Campbell, John Carpenter, Courtney Cox, Joe Dante, Johnny Depp, Robert Englund, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Lloyd Kaufman, Jamie Kennedy, Rose McGowan, Christy Swanson, Edgar Wright, and Amanda Wise. The 10th episode of the horror television series Scream and the 5th film in the franchise were dedicated in his memory. Craven was buried at the Lambert's Cove Cemetery in the town of West Tillsbury and the island of Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. The first scholarly collection of work dedicated to Craven was published by Edinburgh University Press in July 2023. Throughout his career, Craven was nominated for and won numerous awards, including multiple Saturn Awards and several film festival honors. In 1977, Craven won the Critics Award at the SAG Film Festival for the horror film The Hills Have Eyes. In 1997, the Durham Film Festival granted him the grand prize for the slasher film Scream. In 2012, the New York City Horror Film Festival awarded Craven the Lifetime Achievement Award. And that's it. Next week's episode will be the last of the horror series, so I'm going to ask y'all this. Who do you think has the highest kill count? I will most definitely be counting down or up on the kill count. Plus more movies from the chat, from the blogs. As always, follow us on our socials and support us from Under the Apron on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, the Threads, Apron_stories on the Twitter. More info on the links on where you can listen or watch in the show notes. Listen to us on Apple, Spotify, or any other media you can listen to podcasts on. And because you all asked for it, we have the merch.
We've got some merch. Go buy our merch. We've got some merch. Go buy our merch.
It is live and on TeePublic. I have two options available. One, we got the new podcast logo from Under the Apron with the ring lights shining in the middle of the ring. And the other option is your choice of shirt. Get our Fatherless Behavior t-shirts, all in the name of fun. It's all fatherless. Wear them and display them just because you show signs of sassy and unprovoked fatherless behavior. The link will be in the show notes. Don't forget to rate us and leave us a review. And if you feel you want to do a little more, go to patreon.com/From the Apron Podcast. Support us on the Patreon. Become a top tier patron and get patron privileges. And I will shout you out at the end of every episode. Like Babel B, Menace Smiling, Damien H, Chanel from the Nerds in Texas Podcast, Cloud November from the Nose Ascendant Podcast, Wheezy Soup from the Life of a 30-Year-Old Podcast, I Beloved Sigh from the Sweet Life Pod. I'll have the links to these podcasts in the show notes so you can check them out. I love them. Check out darkfatecreations.com. You're going to love their smell, their scented candles. They smell so amazing. Mini Mommy Life, Black Heart Beauty, OMG is Ren, Hannah Time, Messenger of Stupidity, Rabbit, Collector of All Things Sentimental, Celestial Moon Goddess, Toasted Bagel, Swifty Ever After, Lisa's Journey, The Sparkly Experiment, Lily Linguini, Age of Shadow, The Move, yeah. Yo. Ivan Campbell Music, Marijuana Barbie, Sad Riot Boy, Queen of the Underworld, Wow Stark, Roman J, Mariah Jace, Lil Miss Confidence, Professor Milo, Professor, we meet again. Greenery, I Don't Know One, Lost Shadow 88, Plummy Chummy, Intrepid Renegade, Knacked 182, Pixel Has Cake, Dahlia, Dahlia, Pools Fire Mark, The Hot Couple You Know, School Shell, ABGTX, Lindsay 87, Killing Kills Joy, Hey It's Me Your Favorite Chick, Jaded Samya, Kit Kat RBL, Narcissus, Just Another Dude. Thank you guys for supporting the podcast. Patreon.com/From Under the Apron Podcast. Get your name shouted out. Support the podcast. Check out the show notes for links to other podcast shows that you heard on this episode. Send them to mention your favorite wrestling stories, horror stories, questions, comments, ratings, or requests at our email. It is FromUnderTheApron@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, enjoying the live, staying, the gift, and being a huge part of this community. Tell your friends. Join us next time for more stories, movies, and TV show reviews, as well as wrestling-related stories when we come to you from Under the Apron. Yahweh!